Hello and good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone to my third episode of Song Tournament. But before I go any further, I just want to say I hope everyone is enjoying the holiday. I hope you have some time to kind of relax, enjoy yourself, and kind of escape from the realities of life. And I intend to do that tonight by, again, bringing you another episode of Song Tournament. And as you can see here from the board, the subject of tonight's review is going to be Aerosmith. Bluesy, hard rock band formed in the early 70s, composed of Steve Tyler on lead vocals, Joe Perry on lead guitar, Brad Whitford on lead guitar, Tom Hamilton on bass, and Joey Kramer on the drums. And they've had a fairly consistent lineup throughout time, and I think that's really, really impressive, all things considered. But yeah, I mean, they swapped out a few members in the late 70s, early 80s, but it was smooth sailing from there on out, and they've, like I said, for the most part, maintained their classic lineup. But anyways, same rules as before. Basically what you have right here on the board is you have their top 16 songs arranged in a tournament bracket. Now, how did I figure out what the top 16 songs were? Well, a simple Google search. So if you consider that to be an objective measure, then awesome. If not, well, it's all I have to work with, so I'm just going to do the best I can. But basically, I'm going to go through every single round and kind of talk about each song in each round, and I'm going to give my personal opinion as to what song I think is better, and then it's going to advance to the next round, and we're going to go all the way through until we end up with a champion, and I'm very, very excited for this. Now, are all my favorite songs in this top 16 right here? No, of course not. I'm sure yours aren't either, but again, it's all I really have to work with because there's no true way to measure which song is better than the other. It's all a matter of subjective opinion. So let's go ahead and get started with that subjective opinion and look at round number 1. We have Walk This Way from Toys in the Attic versus Draw the Line from Draw the Line. And I really, really enjoy both songs. I mean, Walk This Way is a very kind of bluesy, funky song, but it's kind of fast at the same time, and it became one of their #1 hits of all time, and I'm sure it's been played on the radio to death for you. So, you know, it kind of goes da-da-da-da-da-da-dun, da-da-da-da-da-da-dun, and it's definitely been influential. I can say this, the rhythm of Dr. Feelgood by Motley Crue sounds a lot like it, so there's that. Draw the Line also is a very, very strong number. It's a little bit faster than Walk This Way, but, I mean, I still enjoy it. But, being completely honest, it all comes down to the songwriting here. I think the sound is pretty solid on both of these, but I think Walk This Way flows a little bit better than Draw the Line does. Draw the Line was kind of the beginning of the band's quote-unquote unfocused period, where they were really starting to get very heavy into drugs, and the songwriting definitely suffered a bit, and for that, I think Walk This Way is going to come out on top. So Walk This Way is going to advance, and Draw the Line is unfortunately out. So now we come to round number 2, and we have the number 8 seed, Toys in the Attic, off of Toys in the Attic, versus the number 9 seed, What It Takes, off of Pump, from 1989. And I don't even have to think about this, Toys in the Attic wins. Okay, Toys in the Attic is the lead-off track from the Toys in the Attic album, and it is fast-paced. It's got a nice, hard edge to it, and I just love the rhythm to it. Toys, toys, toys in the attic. What It Takes is one of the worst songs I have ever heard in my life. I absolutely despise this one. I heard it for the first time in 9th grade. I was in somebody's car and they had this Aerosmith Greatest Hits CD playing, and What It Takes came up quite often for some reason, but yeah, it's too sappy, it's too glossy. The lyrics are stupid, the rhythm is stupid, the entire song is stupid. I hate What It Takes. I really do love Toys in the Attic, so there's that. So now we come to round number 3. We have the number 5 seed, Janie's Got a Gun from Pump, versus the number 12 seed, Mama Ken from the debut. And we kind of run into the same issue in the previous round here, and in this round as we did with the previous round, but maybe not to quite such an extent. I do not hate Janie's Got a Gun. I think it, for all of its faults, it is kind of a catchy song, and if it's on, there are worse, you could definitely do worse. I'm not going to flip the channel, okay? Mama Ken, though, is an absolute beast. I love Mama Ken. It's got a harder edge to it. It's got a heavier guitar riff to it, and I just absolutely love Mama Ken. Okay, it's the 5th track, the first song off the 2nd side of that debut album, and it's got some sax work in the middle, which I think goes pretty well with it, but yeah. I love the rhythm of it. I love absolutely everything about Mama Ken. Guns N' Roses also did a cover of it, and they did a good job. So, yeah, Mama Ken is going to move on here, and Janie's Got a Gun is out. We now come to round number 4. Back in the Saddle, 4th seed from Rocks versus the 13th seed, Last Child from Rocks. And boy, this is a tough one. 2 classic Aerosmith songs. Back in the Saddle is pretty close to heavy metal. I'm not sure if you would call it heavy metal, but it's got a very Rolling Stones feel to it. It's very fast, and it's just such a bizarre song, but it's so awesome. I love Back in the Saddle. Back when the band had some punch to it, God, I love it. Last Child, at least from my perspective, it became popular in kind of my inner circle of friends because it was featured on the game Guitar Hero. And the entire time I'm like, come on guys, I was listening to this long before Guitar Hero was even a thing. It is such a funky song. Dun 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 dun. I do not know the lyrics. I once attempted to sing it and I made a complete fool out of myself. Such a tough round, such a tough call, but ask me in a week or so, I might change my opinion, but I'm going Back in the Saddle. Okay, one of the greatest Aerosmith songs ever. Last Child is also one of the greatest Aerosmith songs ever, but Back in the Saddle is faster. Back in the Saddle is more aggressive. I love Back in the Saddle, and I think I just like Last Child. So that concludes round number 4. We now move to round number 5, and this is also going to be a very tough one because we have the number 3 seed, Sweet Emotion, versus the number 14th seed, No More, No More, and both of these are off the Toys in the Attic album. Now, Sweet Emotion is definitely the more popular song. Sweet Emotion definitely is going to be more recognizable. It's going to be on the radio more. No More, No More is, it's still a great song. It's still pretty heavy. It's still kind of slow. Maybe not as slow as Sweet Emotion, but I really do dig both of them. But it's really going to just come down to the rhythm on this one. And if I'm being completely and totally honest, I think I like the rhythm of Sweet Emotion more than No More, No More. No More, No More doesn't quite have the best chorus either. It's just, he's just kind of going, no more, no more, and I don't really care for it fully, but both great songs, but Sweet Emotion is going to sweep up this round. So, round number 6 is next. We have the number 6 seed, Home Tonight, versus the number 11 seed, Nobody's Fault. And both of these are from the Rocks album in 1976. Home Tonight is a power ballad. It's the very last song off of the Rocks album, and I feel they were kind of trying to repeat the success from the Toys in the Attic album, which also ended with a ballad with You See Me Crying. And Home Tonight, I mean, it's a good power ballad, I'll say that. It's pretty slow, but, you know, it's still got some pretty hard-edged guitar work to it, so I'll give it that, and, you know, it's catchy and everything. But Nobody's Fault may be the most underrated Aerosmith song out there. Starts out very slow. It starts out very, very melodic. It just kind of builds up and builds up until it absolutely explodes. This, again, is the band bordering on heavy metal. This thing may not be the fastest thing ever, but it's aggressive and it's dark, and I love everything about it. Nobody's Fault is going to move on. The 11th seed takes out the number 6 seed, so there is that. We now come to the final 2 rounds of the first bracket, and we have Love in an Elevator off of Pump from 1989 versus Seasons of Wither from Get Your Wings from 1974. Love in an Elevator is a pretty popular song. It's very fast, and it's, you know, choruses, I'm not going to lie, I don't mind it. I really don't mind this song at all. I'm not going to try to sing it, I'll just butcher it, but it's got a nice jam session in the middle. My only real complaint about Love in an Elevator is, again, the guitar work is just way too polished. And by this point, they had pretty much lost that raw edge they had. Seasons of Wither is another ballad, but this thing is haunting. This thing is dark, and it's got that raw, aggressive feel to it. I mentioned this on one of my episodes of Album Rant. I talked about Seasons of Wither, and I really, really enjoy it. Out of that era of Aerosmith, which was basically 1987 to present, I am not a huge fan of it at all, but Love in an Elevator is probably one of the better songs from that era, but it's just no contest with Seasons of Wither. Seasons of Wither is going to advance, and Love in an Elevator is going to be out. Finally, we come to round number 8, and we have the number 2 seed, Dream On, versus number 15 seed, Dude Looks Like a Lady. And I'm going to be honest, I do not love Dream On as much as I should. I feel like I should really, really love that song. The problem is, the sound, for me at least, is kind of flat. And that first album, Dream On is from the debut, by the way. That entire first album, I think, kind of suffered just from a very flat sound. I mean, I love it and everything. It still, you know, has an edge to it, which I really, really appreciate. And I think the songwriting is pretty solid for the most part, but I always felt it was kind of flat, and it never really gave me that emotional punch I thought it would. Dude Looks Like a Lady, though, is a very, very silly, very, very stupid song, and to me, it kind of marks the era where Aerosmith was trying way too hard to be mainstream, and it just never really sat that well with me. It's off the Permanent Vacation album from 1987, and it's produced by Bruce Fairbairn. I think that's how you say that. I'm probably mispronouncing it. But he is most well known for his work with Bon Jovi, if that, you know, helps anything. But, it's still no contest. Dream On, for all its faults, is still the better song. It is still overplayed. Well, both of them are overplayed, but Dream On is still the better song. So that is going to conclude the initial rounds, and we now are down to our final 8 contestants. And so let's go right back up to the top, and we have the first seed, Walk This Way, versus number 8 seed, Toys in the Attic. And both of these are from the Toys in the Attic album. Now, I don't think either one is my favorite song from Toys in the Attic. I'm not sure, but I still really, really love both of them. They're very different. Toys in the Attic is very fast and, you know, very swinging, I guess you could say. Walk This Way, like I said, is much more bluesy, and I really, really love the studio version. I've not fully listened to this thing in its entirety, but from what I understand, they attempted a rap remix in the 80s, and from what I've heard, boy, is it terrible. But I'm just talking about the studio version, and again, the studio version is one of my favorite Aerosmith songs ever. But so is Toys in the Attic, and I think I am going to give the edge to Toys in the Attic just because it's faster, it's more aggressive, and Walk This Way is still a little bit overplayed, but I still, have a deep appreciation for it. But Toys in the Attic will advance. The number 1 seed is out. We now come to the second round in the second round. We have the number 4 seed Back in the Saddle versus number 12 seed Mama Ken. And this is going to be another tough choice for me because both of these are 2 of my favorite Aerosmith songs ever. Okay? They're both very, very fast, and they both have an edge to them once again. It's really just going to come down to the sound, and Mama Ken is off the debut. Back in the Saddle is off of Rocks, and the sound of Rocks is a lot better than the debut. I think both of them are 2 of the greatest Aerosmith songs ever. I am supposed to see these guys in concert soon as Steve Tyler gets better. I heard he hurt his larynx, but I really hope I hear both of these. But if I'm just judging this off of the studio releases, off the studio versions, Back in the Saddle is going to win. So, what's going on here? There we go. Back in the Saddle advances. Mama Ken is out. But still, I have so much love for both of these, and they've had a huge, huge impact on my life, but I just like Back in the Saddle better. Probably just because, again, it's so bizarre, it's so funky, but it's fast, and it's raw, and I love it. Now we come to the third round, and it's going to be the number 3 seed, Sweet Emotion, versus the number 11 seed, Nobody's Fault. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give this round to Nobody's Fault, but I still have positive things to say about both of these. Sweet Emotion is still, again, a classic Aerosmith song, and it's one that I really, really love as well. It's definitely, both of these are pretty slow, actually, at least in comparison to other songs, but Nobody's Fault just has more of an aggressive feel to it. I actually heard that Metallica, of all people, based one of their songs off Master of Puppets off of Nobody's Fault, and I can definitely kind of see it. The intro to Nobody's Fault sounds a lot like the intro to Damage Incorporated, but Nobody's Fault, again, is bordering on heavy metal, and it pulls it off so well. I would not say Sweet Emotion is bordering on heavy metal. It's still got that funky, bluesy feel to it. It does the funky, bluesy thing very well, but I just like what Nobody's Fault is doing better. So Nobody's Fault is going to advance. Sweet Emotion is out. And we finally come to the last round in the top 8, I guess. We have the number 2 seed, Dream On, versus number 10 seed, Seasons of Wither. And neither of these are my favorite, but I still really, really love both of them. I gotta say, Dream On is gonna lose a lot of points just for how overplayed it is. I have heard it on the radio so many times, and every time I hear it, I gotta admit I would much rather be hearing Seasons of Wither. So Seasons of Wither will advance, while Dream On is going to, Dream On. And what's going on here? There we go. Again, 2 classic Aerosmith songs, but it just really comes down to my opinion. Seasons of Wither flows better. Seasons of Wither has a better rhythm to it. And Seasons of Wither, I just think, is the stronger song. I know a lot of people love Dream On, and that's their opinion, and they're entitled to it. So we now have the final 4. And in the first round, we have Back in the Saddle, the 4th seed, versus Toys in the Attic, the 8th seed. And yeah, I mean, both of these are the lead-off tracks for their respective albums. Toys in the Attic for Toys in the Attic, and Back in the Saddle for Rocks. And Toys in the Attic is a very, very straightforward rocker. Back in the Saddle just brings something more to the table. Again, it took risks. It definitely took risks. Steven Tyler doing that whole squawky, I'm back in the saddle again thing at the beginning was a definite risk. That could have fallen so flat on its face, but it didn't. And Back in the Saddle, I think, is the better song. So Back in the Saddle advances to the finals, and we are now left with Nobody's Fault and Seasons of Wither. And Seasons of Wither may be the best or the greatest ballad that Aerosmith has ever done. And I did mention this on your Get Your Wings review. On my Get Your Wings review, got a little tongue-tied there. Nobody's Fault may be the most aggressive song they've ever done. It may be the most heavy song they've ever done. So I really just gotta ask myself, what would I prefer? A really, really good ballad or a really, really good, hard, aggressive rocker? And the answer is a very, very good, hard, aggressive rocker. Nobody's Fault wins, or Nobody's Fault wins this round, and Seasons of Wither will fade away, but not entirely because I'm still going to listen to it because it's awesome. But regardless, we now have the final round. We have the number 4 seed Back in the Saddle versus number 11 seed Nobody's Fault. And wow. 2 of my favorite songs ever. Not just 2 of my favorite Aerosmith songs, 2 of my favorite songs of all time. I mean, how do you even put a price on this? Back in the Saddle, again, is very fast. Nobody's Fault is a little bit more brooding. I love both of these. I have nothing but praise to say about both of them. So it's really just going to come down to, if I had to pick which one I was going to listen to, it would be Nobody's Fault, and Nobody's Fault is going to be the winner. Based off of this, Nobody's Fault is the greatest Aerosmith song ever, and based off what I have to work with, I will stand by this. Now, could there have been other Aerosmith songs that did not make the top 16 that could have been contenders? Absolutely. Such as Train Kept A-Rollin', or Uncle Salty, or Combination. Great stuff. I mean, but like I said, this is what I had to work with. These were the top 16, and out of this top 16, Nobody's Fault is going to be the winner. And I would like to say thank you all very much for joining me tonight, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you disagree with me, by all means, tell me which round you would have disagreed with me on, and then how you would have taken it from there. If your favorite Aerosmith song is one that was not even on the list, I mean, mine very well may have been, by all means, post that as well. But just please be sure to be respectful and no profanity or politics. Anyways, next week, we're going to take a look at a light in the black or just a rainbow in the dark. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.